This is the foreign ministerial. In fact, it's the last foreign ministerial that Secretary Blinken will be at, so a very important event for him as well. As your viewers may know, this past July at the 75th anniversary summit that NATO had, there were plans to open its first Middle East liaison office in Jordan, and that's really the impetus for why the Jordanians are attending the foreign ministerial right now. And it's also, a recognition that what happens in the Middle East impacts Europe. We know what happens with instability. We know what happens with the resulting immigration. And we also know that the Russians and Chinese would like to have influence in a region. And obviously, what Russia and China does, Russia in particular, impacts the NATO nations.
Now, Jordan has been concerned for a while about spillover from the Israel-Hamas war onto its territory, but now it has to worry about instability that we're seeing in Syria as rebels advance, and also in Iraq with a threat posed by pro-Iranian militias. Does NATO intend to help with these issues, and what can they actually do to help at this point?
By help, I think what you have to start building is trust. Cooperation is really a prerequisite to the capacity to act no matter what NATO may decide in the future. Both sides have to understand each other's capabilities. They have to have an appreciation for the procedures that are there. And so this goes back years. If you take a look, in 2004, NATO launched the Istanbul Cooperation Initiative, and this was largely the Gulf Cooperation Council nations, so Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, the UAE, and of course Saudi Arabia and Oman participating a little bit. And I don't know if this is going to lead to or Jordanian to Jordan joining the Istanbul Cooperation Initiative, but the whole idea is about protecting NATO interests as well. And I think if you look at just this past April, where the Jordanians participated in the interception of Iranian missiles during the April attack on Israel, this is an example of where you need multilateral cooperation. You need to develop that trust, those relationships, so if necessary, you can act.
With Donald Trump returning to office in January and calling for disengagement from the Middle East, that may be the coming American policy shift, but what does the rest of NATO see as its role in the Middle East?
First, I think it's important to understand that what President-elect Trump will face when he gets back into office is the same challenge that many American presidents have had in the past 25 years. There's a desire to get out of the Middle East, but there's this pull to be in the Middle East. Just look at the contradiction. I want to be out of the Middle East, but at the same time, President-elect Trump has said there'll be hell to pay if Hamas doesn't release the hostages. You can't disengage and be involved at the same time. As for the rest of NATO, I think in the same way you saw a little bit of consternation with out-of-area operations in Afghanistan and Iraq, NATO allies really diverge on what's the appropriate role. Now, Russia remains the number one issue. There's no doubt there. But if the U.S. disengages or decreases its support for Ukraine, then NATO nations may have to maybe they're going to be less inclined to expand engagement in the Middle East. So it remains to be seen. But I think the key is balancing Russian and Chinese involvement in the Middle East.